Hey, well, welcome back to the channel. I'm in my little white suit here because one of the things we're doing is I'm going to continue sanding to try to get this so that we can get some, we are finished with the epoxy, so I want to get varnish down on it. So I want to take and do just a little bit more sanding on this, and it's just so dusty, so that I thought this is probably a little bit better. I'm going to go over, I'd already started some of this, I'm going to go over this with, probably 150 and try to get some of the swirl marks out. But we're not going to go too much down farther on this. I've already done one. We'll flip it over and do the other side. And then what I think I'll do is we'll take and clean all of this out, and we'll do probably the bottom with varnish, just because that's going to be a little bit easier to kind of test it out from there. But let's go ahead and finish getting suited up, and we'll take and sand away on this. Well, now that we have got this thing all cleaned, except for the bird poop, it is nice and smooth, and we're going to go ahead and put it up. And then tomorrow, we'll end up coming out and doing a first coat of epoxy on it and see how that comes out. We'll end up doing a... there's still dust on it even after all that water. We'll come in and we'll do some more work on just cleaning it up, do some denatured alcohol, make sure that that's done, and then we'll put our first coat of varnish on there. And we may not do that many coats of varnish right off the bat, so that maybe we can get it in the pond this weekend, but we're getting there. So the very first thing we want to do is we're going to come in here and get some denatured alcohol, and we're going to rub this thing down, make sure that it is clean, that there's no dust on it, because definitely there was yesterday. And then I'm going to tape off the bottom. That way, we're not going to get any drips going onto the front. Now, I've read and looked and seen a whole bunch of different ways of doing this. I've got rollers, but I think what I'm going to do is we're just going to take a foam brush and we're going to put on a very, very, very thin coat and leave it at that. So we're going to put on 3 to 5. We'll kind of see how well this goes on and what it looks like. I may not put on 5, but then again, I may, because it's supposed to rain. We were going to launch them this weekend, and it doesn't look like there's supposed to be rain all weekend. So that doesn't look like that's going to occur. So if that's the case, then I'll take, the weekend to really start working on finishing these up. And maybe that's the thing I should do anyway. Okay. First off, buy more denatured alcohol. So we're going to do a very thin coat. And the thing about this is you do not want to really go over this very much, but very, very light. that's my very first attempt at varnishing, and one of the things that I kept reading was to make sure that you kept your utensils dry. I mean, it needs to be dry, because this stuff, although it has some consistency to it, it runs, and it'll run quite a bit. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to keep that as dry as possible. I thought I did see one little drip over here that I wanted to get taken care of right here. And it did also say to keep from trying to touch this stuff up. You know, if there's a drip, just let it happen. See, there's one right there. I'm just going to let that go. We'll sand that out. I did notice some there's some dry spots, and I'm not sure if that's dry because I didn't get material on it. Oh gosh, there's some big drips, and I just don't know if I want. Oh, I can get those. So here's the good thing. This is the very first coat, and so it doesn't have to be perfect. As we get further down the road, we'll be able to deal with these a little bit better. The one thing that I did notice, I mean, I really didn't put very much down here. I was almost kind of like rubbing it on, but it still seemed to drip. This over here is a little heavier, and we're probably going to have to work it a little bit more, but I don't see the drips in this. Well, we're just going to let this dry. I see some kind of drippy areas there. We're going to let this dry, come back out. I don't know how long it takes to dry, but we won't get to it. Maybe tonight we'll end up coming in and may sand it all down once again and put another coat on, or flip it over and do the other side, which that may be what we do, and then we sand it all at once. Sometimes makes it a little easier, although we've got the tape on it. It's always trying to think through things. But let's just close things up and get into work and let this dry on its own. Hey, well, it's the next day, and we're coming out here to take a look at this, and actually it's not that bad. I think it's decent. I mean, it really is decent. At least for, I mean, we've got two coats. Some are a little bit more heavy. I mean, you know, there may be one that has areas that may have three coats. But, you know, I did a lot of reading, and a couple things that I ended up finding out. It looks as though, you know, Chesapeake Lightcraft, they showed to take a roller and then to kind of tip it out with the sponge. There's other folks that say, you know, put it on with a sponge, and then, you know, you're basically tipping it out, but always keeping it wet. And the hardest part is, you know, you've got a part that's wet and a part that's dry, and when you're tipping it out over here, that part starts to dry, and then you can pull it down really well. Now, the one thing that I did do is I put a coat on in some places where I didn't have, I mean, I didn't sand it down again. But I'm just going to leave it at this. And I think maybe this fall, because, you know, we really want to get it into the water. I think it's got enough UV protection on it that it should be good. But there's some, you know, some flaws in there that we want to take and really make look nice. But I'm going to flip this over and let's take a look at the deck side, and then we can make a determination of how we're going to proceed with that. So one good thing, I did realize that we did come in here and we sanded it down. So that's really good. We may want to come back over this with some 220 because I do see a few low spots. And if we could get that sheen out, I think that's going to be a little more helpful. Because one of the things that I did notice, that hole, there was some areas that, you know, had some dimples in it, some pock marks. It's okay because it is below, but here's what I want to, I don't know if you can see this, but if you're looking at that, there's some deeper areas in these. So this has just been epoxied 3 times. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with that one, and I'm really going to work to get all of that out so that it's nice and clean. So we may go back over it with some more epoxy, but we want to get that surface as smooth as possible so that when we lay down our first coat of varnish, that we're not trying to fill those in with varnish. And I think that's what we were trying to do with the other one, because that's not going to make it really smooth. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of hand sand this a little bit. And we may come out here just a little later today and try to put on a coat of varnish on top of this. I think that'll be good. So let's just take and sand this out. Well, first coat went on. Actually, what we're going to do is we need to get this top part. So we'll get that really quick. I do see a few little runs. I don't want to touch it too much, but this right over on this side was at least wet enough. The one thing that I did learn is you need to get it wet enough. And I do see some, you know, there's some little places here. I'm not going to touch them because we can get those out with a little buffing and a little sanding. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do the combing, and that's going to be it. We're going to let this dry. But I think this first coat really is phenomenal. And we'll get the rest of this. We'll come back in here with some 220, get this nice and pretty. We may even go to a higher grit just because it's going on really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll be out later on today to take a look and see what the results were. So I'm making an executive decision here. Knowing that we want to get these boats out this weekend with the possibility, I've got to get that when they're done. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to call this one here finished for now. Because I'd have to take and go back and re-sand this, put another coat of varnish on it, which is still fine, but I don't think I have enough time to be able to get this. The funny thing is, yeah, it's going to cost me a little bit because we have to run a decal, and that decal With $5, it's not that big a deal. So I am going to have to do that. But I did just kind of lay out what this is going to look like. And you can see we've got the swirls in there. Now my concern is it's possible those swirls are in the wood. If they are not coming out. But one of the things that we can do is, I mean, we'll just keep putting, it could be in the epoxy. If we just put on another, I mean, we actually have another 4 layers to put on this, and we could even do more than that. We'll keep building it up. But I think for now, we're just going to take this thing outside, bring this one down, toss this one up, and we're going to call it quits on this for now so that we can get out this weekend.